stuff you don't realize things still affect you, so prayerfully they'll be, I'll get through this fine. Okay, so, and I wrote this out because it's easier for me to follow, so I'm just going to read through it. It'll be easier for me. Okay. I had 3 homes growing up. I spent about 6 years in each. So I guess I didn't have much consistency in my life. I always felt like an outcast or a bother to those around me. My life taught me to accommodate others and justify, or to accommodate others or just try harder. My father was a deacon and or a Sunday school teacher for most of my life. I was introduced to God at a very young age. Though I haven't always had a personal relationship with Him, God has been the constant in my life. I was the middle child in my family. I had an older sister and a younger brother, and until age 5 I lived with my mom and dad. He was in the Navy at the time. Being so young, I don't remember much, but there are flashes of memories I have that influenced my faith. One example of that happened on our way home. My dad picked us up from daycare, and we had car trouble on the way home. We were stranded on the side of the freeway. So my dad got out and raised the hood of the car, and he waved someone down. But before he hopped in the car, he stuck his head in our car and sternly told us not to get out or roll down the windows. We were to sit there until he came back, and then he was gone. As we sat there with cars rushing by, we all became afraid. Then we got an idea that comforted us. Mom will be on her way home, and she'll get us, we thought. So with anticipation, we started watching the cars go by. Suddenly we saw our mom's Toyota coming. When we began calling her and banging on the windows, but she didn't see us. She kept on going. My little brother had began to cry, and I don't remember what my sister's reaction was. But I remembered that God could always see you. I don't know where I got that from, but I just knew that He could. And I took comfort in that. And that experience began to teach me a lesson, that people were limited with what they could do. My dad did return, and we went on our way that day. But I've never forgotten how God comforted me that day. My father also told us a story once. He was late coming home from work, and he walked in the house, and when I was little, I was very old for my age, I guess. At least that's what adults told me all the time. They'd always tell me to go over with the kids. But my dad was home late, and I knew he was late, and I asked him why he was home so late. And he had had car trouble once again, and was stuck in the middle lane of the freeway. And he said that the rain was coming down real hard, and he couldn't see, and there was too much traffic for him to get out of the car. And he said that he prayed that day that no one would hit him, and no one did. So that just kept getting reinforced in me that when you had a problem, that God was the person to go to. But my parents had a troubled marriage. I was too small to understand everything. But I remember them arguing. I remember waiting up one night for one of my parents to get home so we could cut my brother's birthday cake. But I ended up being sent to bed because I fell asleep at the table, and my mom never got home that night. I remember my mom making my dad hot chocolate one night as he shoveled the driveway. And I remember my dad speaking in a Julia Child's voice. I think everybody, that's a chef, Julia Child's voice, making us bread pudding one night when my mom wasn't home. But my parents finally did get divorced. Their circumstances were messy. Without going into much detail, we ended up one evening in my dad's Chevy without my mom, and we drove to Indianapolis. We had none of our things, just the clothes on our back. And when I realized we weren't going back home, I started asking my dad lots of questions. And that irritated him. That and the fact that my little brother constantly had to go to the bathroom. We had to keep stopping for him to go to the bathroom. So and my dad just kept explaining that we had to get through the mountains before dark. And my dad was praying, so I did too. But I soon realized the concern. The rounded roads in the mountains were narrow, and the headlights of the oncoming cars would blind you as you drove. And so God got us through that as well. And after all, I thought, and I gave God credit for getting us there. After all, I thought, that's who I prayed to. Through many breakdowns and prayers, we arrived at our destination. I had a sigh of relief. Okay, we're here. Here was my grandma's house, and that was home number 2. The beginning was great. It was July, and it was my 6th birthday, so they had a big party for me. People were hugging and kissing me, saying, I'm cousin so-and-so, and I'm your great aunt so-and-so. But soon the party was over. You see, my grandmother wasn't expecting us. I always felt in the way, and that we inconvenienced her. Remember, we had no luggage or belongings when we arrived there, so we were often reminded how dirty we were when we got there. Our focus was to stay out of the way and not make any trouble, but you try doing that when your age is 3, 6, and 8. No matter how hard we tried, we were always getting in trouble. There was a place of rest in that home. My auntie, my dad's sister, I got the privilege of being able to sleep in her room, and at night, she would let me stay up and watch old movies. I loved that. My grandma did provide us a place to stay, and I'll always love her for that. We had nowhere else to go. And she also took me to church. My favorite part of church was singing. I could sing as loud as I wanted to, and no one would tell me to be quiet. Singing is in our heritage, she would say, so I was encouraged to do it, especially at church. That was something that I could do right. Church, Sunday school, vacation Bible school, those were my places of rest. Therefore, God was my place of rest. I lived with my grandma for 6 years. Divorce wasn't very common in those days, but add to that living with your dad. I got teased by the kids because I didn't have a mom, and was felt sorry for by all my teachers. I didn't fit in at school either. My desire to please and just try a little harder was reinforced. That often got me in trouble at school too. My dad and grandma often accused me of trying to butter up my teachers. That info was often shared with my teachers, so my actions were never received as sincere. One Halloween, I won a contest, and I came home with a huge bag of candy. I was so proud of myself. Upon getting in the car with my grandma, I was accused of begging for it. And no matter how much I explained, the worse it got. I was accused of lying, and by the time my dad got home, all I received for my accomplishment was a spanking. Once again, I found comfort in God because He knew the truth. He would help me. One morning, we were on our way to church with our dad, as we always did on Sunday mornings. But my dad missed his turn. I piped up once again. "Hey, this isn't the way to church," he said. And my dad replied, "That's correct." He had taken us to Six Flags a few months earlier, and we met this lady and her son. He went on to say, "Do you remember Llewellyn and David?" And we all said, "Kind of." Well, he announced to us, "I'm getting married today." And we drove on to a different church, and they were married. I was so happy I had a mom, finally, and she was pretty. Someone I could be proud of once again. So we went to a party, and I met my new cousin so-and-so and my new aunt so-and-so, and finally I was accepted. My mom has since told me that I scared her to death. She said I was always hugging her and was very touchy-feely. We dealt with our adjustments in becoming a blended family. I was 12 and dealing with my own awkwardness. We moved to Chicago, where my mom was from, and this was my third home. I was so thankful that God finally gave me a mom. We attended private schools, and I still had issues with my motives being misunderstood. I went to an all-girls Catholic private school, and though I received a good education, I struggled socially. Many times I found myself losing myself in the crowd. I wasn't black enough for the black kids, nor was I white enough for the white kids. I tried to fit in, but often found myself disappointed with myself because I wasn't true to myself, whoever that was. We slowly stopped attending church, and I was trying to find my way. Though my life wasn't a picnic, it wasn't that bad either. God had always surrounded me with people that loved me in the midst of my life, and I had a knowing that He was always with me. But I still tried to accommodate others, and if I wasn't accepted, I would just try harder. I'm here today because God has been faithful to me. Life taught me, do better, try harder. God has told me to come as I am. He has always known my heart and motives and has never pushed me away. Once I found acceptance in Him, I was able to accept myself. And through the years, He has given me my greatest gift, a family. I have a husband who loves me most of the time for who I am. In those times when he doesn't, I know God is still my constant. And I've been able to give my children something I've never had: consistency. God taught me that. I also love everyone who is invested in my life. After all, people have limits, but God is limitless. I believe everyone did the best that they could. I will be forever grateful to all three of my homes. The lessons weren't always sweet, but I honor them all for teaching. My dad and my mom, and that's my stepmom, I call her mom, but my dad and my mom have given all they have to raise me. Llewellyn came in my life at the perfect time. God saw to that. She has become my anchor at times and a friend at others. Though I scared her in the beginning, I think I've sufficiently rubbed off on her. Remember that God is faithful. He never leaves us or forsakes us, and He continues to be my constant.